This is one of the most interesting old cameras, and it's a joyous piece of gear and almost a modern classic. And it could have been the best compact camera to get even today, but as always, there is a catch. You know this overwhelming desire to put a b-roll of me making coffee when you do photography or camera YouTube? Well, not gonna do it. And this is of course Lumix LX100II. This camera was released in 2018 and it was the second iteration of the LX100 that originally came out in 2014. This is one of those Lumix cameras that were created in close cooperation with Leica, which means there is Leica Deluxe 7, the same camera, just more expensive. And right away this cooperation with Leica brought probably the best thing about this LX100, and it's the lens. It is a 24 to 75 mm Leica branded glass that has a maximum aperture of 1.7, which goes down to 2.8 when fully zoomed in. And I must say, the way it renders images is just beautiful. Stepping the aperture down to f4 and lower makes images very sharp, and probably the sharpest I've seen on a built-in zoom lens. And wide open from f1.7 to f4, it creates really great background separation, almost vintage-like, and the blurry background looks somehow almost like pencil drawings, and it also allows for low light shooting. There is a lot going for this camera apart from the lens though. It is a 21 megapixel sensor. It only gives 17 effective megapixels, but the good thing is it does it across all aspect ratios. Usually on the Micro Four Thirds cameras, which this Lumix LX100II is, you get the best resolution with an aspect ratio of 4:3. So normally only this aspect ratio would utilize the entire sensor, and then you get the best resolution. But with this camera you can shoot 16:9 or 3:2 without losing on quality. And this kinda explains this dedicated aspect ratio toggle on the lens. So you can choose between 3:2, 16:9, 1:1 and 4:3, which can potentially inspire some creativity here. Overall, there is plenty of resolution, especially for posting on social media, but it should also be enough for some moderate size printing. The focus and speed is also just great, especially for the way I shoot, which is usually center focus and recompose or just touch to focus. And I don't play with focus tracking on this camera because I feel that it just doesn't make much sense in terms of vibes. The ergonomics are also there for a compact camera. This combination of a grip on the front and a thumb rest on the back make it pretty comfortable for casual shooting when you just take a picture and put the camera away after that. Let's just admit it, it's a very beautiful camera that perfectly combines this more classic aesthetics with physical buttons and dials in a generally modern looking, even by today's standards, and a very compact package. The only two complaints I have here is that, first of all, the aperture ring is just very close to the zoom dial, so I find myself constantly changing zoom when I just try to change the aperture. And the second one is that there is no articulated screen, so there is no wrist level shooting, which is not that big of a deal for this particular camera because I think I still found probably the perfect way to shoot this camera. And this brings us to another great thing about this camera, which is the ability to customize the picture output quite extensively right in camera. You can set saturation, contrast, sharpness, noise reduction, white balance compensation right in camera. And then you can also adjust the curve, which can really take the images to the next level. So after some experimenting, you can easily achieve exactly the look you want straight out of the camera. And then you can also experiment with some recipes afterwards. And here I found my favorite way to use this camera, which is to use the Leica monochrome profile with some adjustments to achieve high contrast and a bit of grain. Then you switch the LCD to information only and use the viewfinder to compose. There is just something special about having this Leica-ish experience and having the results that are similar to Leica, but in a different package for a much lower price. So could this be the perfect compact camera to get even today? Well, almost. There are still some considerations that prevent me from giving this camera the crown of being the best compact camera. First of all, let's talk about video. Being able to shoot decent video is something of a must for a compact camera in 2024, especially when there is so much competition. But this Lumix LX100II is not the best camera for this. For instance, this video is now shot on Sony ZV-E10, which is also a compact camera but a bit more modern. And this video is on Lumix LX100II. So as you can see, it's not the best one. Okay, I couldn't even get it to focus for this particular section, and it does perform slightly better with better light. So here's a small segment from my recent trip to Poland, shot entirely on Lumix LX2. It wouldn't be a big deal if you didn't have so many choices nowadays for compact cameras that do great in terms of both photos and videos. Just as an example, Fujifilm recently announced Fujifilm X-M5, which so far seems like an amazing compact camera that can also do 6K video shooting open gate. And the issue is this new Fujifilm camera is not much more expensive than this old Lumix. And the price generally is the issue here. You see, if you buy this camera from more official sources of used gear like MPB, it does get a bit too expensive. In good to perfect condition, this Lumix goes for more than $1,000. And for this money, you can find almost an infinite number of equally great cameras and kits, different but still great. You can get something like X-T10 or X-T20 with some decent lens and have these amazing film simulations there. Or you can get something like Fujifilm X-F10 for almost 2 times cheaper. By the way, I made a video about this camera some time ago on this channel, which I will link somewhere in the description. Then you can get some other Micro Four Thirds cameras like Lumix GX80, and you will probably even have enough money to buy a Leica lens on top. And this will give you the same Leica recipes, similar compactness, built-in stabilization, but also allow you to try different lenses in the future. You can even go crazy and buy the actual Leica Deluxe 7, which is the same camera as this LX100II. It is a bit more expensive and you will get the same camera, but the Leica brand will probably allow this purchase to not lose that much value in the future or even become a collector's item at some point. Okay, but then you can ask why not buy it for much cheaper on local marketplaces or on eBay. And here lies the second issue. These cameras tend to get some possibly deal-breaking issues that you might not notice when you buy online. And one of them is sensor dust. Like on many other cameras with built-in lenses, the dust is getting through the lens on the sensor when you turn the camera on and off. And since you cannot take the lens out, it is almost impossible to clean. Another issue is the scroll ring. And like on many other older cameras, sometimes it just goes completely rogue over time and starts registering some false movements. I think someone even called it the scroll ring of death or something. And even though this issue is not a deal breaking for this particular camera because there are so many buttons and dials on top, so there are no fundamental actions tied to this particular ring, it might still be annoying, especially when you pay this much for a camera. So generally you need to be very careful when buying this camera online, and these issues might just not exist on something like Lumix GX80 that has actual buttons instead of a scroll ring, and also has removable lens, so you can easily clean the sensor whenever you need. But despite all the issues, there is still something special about the Lumix LX100 Mark II. The unique images that it produces, the versatility of a built-in lens, just the way it looks and feels to shoot make it one of the most interesting compact cameras even today. Whenever I post photos from this camera online, the posts get a lot of love testimonials from other owners of LX100 or LX100II, and the images in general just seem to be universally loved by a lot of people. So in the end, you might just find a very satisfying camera in this Lumix LX100 Mark II.